Welcome to the HMO Property Show. By investors, for investors. Catch us weekly as we discuss all things cash flow positive property investing. Whether you're a seasoned investor, a new landlord, or just curious about property investing, this is the podcast for you. Sponsored by the Co-Living Collective, your trusted partner in creating vibrant and sustainable shared living experiences. Visit us at colivingcollective.com.au to learn more.
Welcome back to the HMO Property Show. I'm your host, Neil Gibb, and today I want to talk to you about the market in general. Surprise, surprise, you're tuning into a property podcast and we're going to talk about property, right? But the thing is, over Christmas and the start of this year has gone absolutely bonkers in our business. And I think people are now starting to realize two things. Cash flow positive properties that get capital growth at the same time are just much better than negative gated properties. And I think a lot of people in Perth are now waking up and realizing they've got a lot of equity in their property, and they are now starting to look at what they can do with that equity to make their money work hard for them, so they don't have to continue to work hard for money into the future. But the problem that I'm seeing right now is the housing crisis, as we keep hearing it being called across the country, is, we don't build enough homes, population growth is too strong, immigration is the problem. And yes, that is part of the problem, right? But the problem is a lot of these people that are coming into the country, a lot of these people that move from state to state, not all of them, but the majority of them need rental housing to start with. And the problem is, the people that are moving from a different country into Australia aren't used to the 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, double lock-up garage with games room and theatre rooms. And a lot of these people actually don't even need that style of housing, right? A lot of these people need something affordable, convenient, and close to where they work or close where they've got friends. And they also want it to be, if they're moving to the country, they want to make friends, right? They don't want to just move all the way to this beautiful country and then have no one to talk to, no one to live with. So yes, I'm banging my standing on my soapbox again and saying the HMO is a great solution. But I also think this is why our business went crazy over Christmas and New Year. No crazy offers that we put on there or anything like that. We just had lots and lots of inquiries, lots of people signing up to work with us. We had a record month in December. January was another incredible month as well. And we're starting Feb off really, really strong. And I think what the problem is people are now starting to realize that the bigger issue is the way that people live has changed and is changing. But the way that we design houses, or I'm going to remove myself from that because obviously the way we design houses is totally different. But the way that the majority of all of these people out there that are selling house and land packages are just designing 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom properties. They might have dropped the games room, or they might have lost the theatre room to make it a little bit smaller, which makes it a little bit more affordable. But they're still building the wrong style of housing for the rental market. And until these two things line up, as in the way we live has changed and the way we design houses has changed, I don't think we are going to see a change. I think the headlines are going to continue. They've continued for years, right? I've seen some material that Simon Priestley put out from Propertyology. We had him on the podcast in the very early days, and he was talking about how all the way through history, it's always been in the newspapers that prices are too high, people are getting priced out the market, etc., etc., etc. The narrative never changes, the headlines never change, and you know what? The only thing that has changed is the way we build houses, because back in them days, we used to build smaller 2x1s, 3x1s on big blocks. Now we build 4x2s, 5x3s on smaller blocks, and people have been conditioned to think that if they don't build a bigger house, then they won't be able to sell it in the future. But when we look at the rental market specifically, around 31% of Australian households rent. That's close to 3 million households right across the country. And if we look at who make up these renters, 27% of renters live alone and 33% are couples without kids. So that's 60% of the rental market. And if there's 3 million households that lease or rent, that 60% of that is about 1.6, 1.7 million households that are single or couples. And these people are renting 3, 4 and 5 bedroom houses. Now, let's look at the supply that's coming through. because around 39% of homes right now are 3 bedrooms. So at least they're getting smaller, but they're getting smaller because blocks are getting smaller to try and make them more affordable. And some builders are struggling to get the 4-bedroom houses on some of these smaller blocks. But around 28% of all housing stock that's coming through the market right now, 4-bedroom. That's nearly 2/3 of housing stock that's coming through that are large family homes. So why are all the singles and couples renting homes that are built for families? Why are singles families getting priced out of the rental market right now? Why is the rental market out of control? The median rental or the median rent in a suburb like Armadale is like $700 a week. That is absolutely bonkers. These areas are supposed to be affordable, but they're not. Why? Supply and demand is the driving force in all markets, and the supply that we're bringing through is the wrong supply for the demand looking for the housing. Simple. So there's a bottleneck there, right? One person or 2 people, 1 full house. So you got 1 person, 1 full house, a 3 or 4 bedroom home. You got 1 kitchen, 1 living room, 1 bathroom in use. And then you've got 3 bedrooms that aren't being used. Right across the country now, we've got millions and millions of empty bedrooms. Now, I'm not saying go out there and rent your bedrooms out, although a lot of people are starting to do this to help them offset the increase in mortgage payments and everything else that's gone up in value because of inflation. But we're just not using the housing stock right, and we continue to build the same housing stock, and we expect, should I say, to get a different outcome. And I think it was Einstein that said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Now, all the government are doing is they're just fueling the fire by throwing more and more money into the housing market and saying, let's build more houses. But they're all building 3, 4 and 5 bedroom houses, right? And a lot of these people are singles or couples, again, that need rental accommodation. Even if it's 1 bedroom apartments or 2 bedroom apartments or 1 single bedroom houses, which used to be called single bedroom dwellings. They're now called small dwellings under the new residential design code, or little 2 bedroom units. But the problem is a lot of people can't get these to stack up in this market because the construction cost is a lot higher than the actual end sale value of these properties. So again, I'm not saying the HMO is the answer to this, but more HMOs in the market will definitely alleviate some of this problem, right? Because when you've got an underutilized housing stock, rental stock gets absorbed inefficiently. Families are getting priced out and they're competing harder. And because they're competing harder, the rents rise. And because the rents rise, it gets more unaffordable. But then there's so much demand out there that vacancy rates stay low. So even if we continue to build more homes, if we keep building the wrong ones, the problem's not going to get solved, right? I say it more and more again. Renters are getting attention, right? But also owner-occupiers out there, right? There's more stats that have been released just recently. I read a newsletter from Michael Matusik not too long ago, and he was talking about this same thing, right? Right now, there's a growing group in Australia of single or lone person households. Often they are over 45 or 50 years old, living alone in a 3 to 5 bedroom house. And a lot of these people are mortgage-free or close to it because they've also bought these homes 20 years ago. They might have bought them for 20% of what they're worth now, and they're almost mortgage-free or close to it. So looking from the outside in, you'd think, oh, this person is debt-free living in that property, but the property looks tired. It's not getting maintained very well. They potentially don't have a very good job. These single, I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people, if they're living in this home alone and they're on the average wage, rates, insurances, utilities keep rising. The maintenance drops away. Like they might think, well, what's the point in cutting the grass? I live here alone. I can handle long grass. I can handle the bush out the front of the house out of control. Every now and then, but as long as inflation continues to increase, their income continues to decrease, right? And then all of a sudden the house owns them and they don't own the house. And we talk about it a lot, asset rich, cash flow poor, equity rich, cash flow poor. The other problem is as well, we've got loneliness and social isolation. And we've got all these people. I think the last stats were like 28% of all households right across the country are single or lone person households. It's a combination of rental houses and also owner-occupier houses. The other problem that this is having, right, and this is something that my wife is super passionate about right now. We have just very, very gratefully and humbly partnered with the Happiness Co. If you don't know who the Happiness Co are, check them out on Facebook and stuff like that. Led up by an incredible friend of mine called Julian Pace. And Jules seen an opportunity in the market where he has released a AI mental health companion, which is, it's got limitations in there. It's not like ChatGPT. It's been built specifically to help people unpack their emotions and support them through difficult times. It's not there to, there's certain triggers in there that if people are getting too far down a rabbit hole to talk about suicide and stuff like that, then it does give them phone numbers for people to call and stuff. But we've just partnered with the Happiness Co, and we've released this to every single person, every single tenant in our property portfolio. We're also going to give it to all the owners. We're also going to give it access to all of our team members. So they will have a mental health companion in their pocket at all times. And I've got the app on my phone myself. And it's really cool. They can just tap in whenever they're feeling down, whenever they've got something on their minds, and it can potentially help them see things from a different angle, right? But the problem with a lot of these households that are out there right now, they don't have access to the Happy app. They don't know Jules and the Happiness Co. So a lot of these single person households, they're mostly socially isolated, and they are most likely to report poor well-being because they're just sat in this big home. They haven't got the money to go out and socialise with their friends. They're all alone. They're feeling more disconnected. You know, they've got bedrooms that they don't even go in anymore. The house is silent. They feel disconnected. And everything's becoming a bit of a burden for them, right? Not just financially, but also emotionally as well. And, you know, all this stuff out there in the news is just talking about the housing policies and the housing shortage and stuff like that. But it should also be looking at the emotional and the social isolation aspect of the housing stock that we are creating, right? Because we've got a country specifically that is feeling more isolated and disconnected than ever before. So what I've been thinking about in the background, we've been talking about with the team as well, is let's think this person is in their 50s, they are single, they're sitting on a property that's potentially worth $800,000, maybe even $1 million, and it might have, you know, $100,000, $250,000 left on the mortgage, something like that. Might even have zero left on the mortgage because they've just been diligent and they've been paying it down over 20 years, and congratulations for doing that. But they are now sat on a heap of cash, as we say, equity rich, cash flow poor, and they're feeling isolated, right? So what the people can potentially do, sell down their principal place of residence. Now, if it's a 3, 4, or 5 bedroom home, then this would free up a home for a family. And then this single individual can then move into a HMO, rent a room in a HMO, and then use the capital that they have got from the sale of their principal place of residence, which would be capital gains tax free as well, which is incredible because it means they don't have to pay tax on the money that they've made. Then they could move into a HMO. They could lower their living costs. They don't have to deal with any maintenance. All of a sudden, they've got a community of people around them to support them and ask them questions and potentially have a glass of wine or a beer with on a Friday night after work. And then they've also got cash on the hip, cash to travel, cash to help family, cash to experience life, cash to do the things that everybody wants to do, right? But everybody right now is feeling the stress. Everyone's feeling the impact. Everyone's just feeling life in general. A lot of people that I'm talking to are like, people are feeling out there, right? So they could live in the same city, they could live in the same suburb, they just have a totally different structure around them. And all of a sudden, they've flipped the switch and they've got money in their pocket and they're living in a beautiful home and they don't have to stress about maintenance and stuff like that. And they've also started to free up housing stock for the people in the market that need it right now. And a lot of people might look at this as downsizing, and to a degree it kind of is, but it's also upgrading your life because you've come from zero cash and zero friends and zero community to cash in your pocket, a community of people that you live with, and you get to experience some of the finer things in life as well. Now, the other problem that we've got, and another thing that my beautiful wife is working so hard in the background with, is the single women in housing stress, which is the fastest growing cohort of homelessness right across the country right now. Look, I'm not going to take any credit for this. She's done all of this herself. So she's gone out there and she has partnered with She's the one that's really pushed for the Happiness Core collaboration, which is going to be incredible. She's also the one that's been out there working with Worthy Australia, which helps families escaping domestic violence. And what we've been doing with them guys is we've been putting together what we call safe havens. So when they need a safe haven to escape a domestic violence situation, HMO Property Core Living Rooms Co-Living Collective, in partnership with Worthy, have started to furnish safe havens so that people can then have somewhere to live with their kids if they've got them, but more importantly, get out of that domestic violence situation as well. So she is going to be releasing a podcast soon. I think it's called Beyond Four Walls. And so if you're interested in all this stuff, it's going to be out pretty soon, and she's going to have some really good guests on there as well. But more importantly, because of this fastest growing demographic of women, which is in housing stress and homelessness in Australia, often age over 45, many of them are divorced or widowed. Many of them have either worked their whole lives or have stayed at home their whole lives and raised a family, which, having 2 young kids, I could categorically say that I would much prefer to go to work, because I think 8 hours at work is easier than 8 hours at home looking after 2 little terrors like I have right now. So I have nothing but respect for the females or the parents or the males if they've decided to stay home as well and look after the children. Nothing but respect for the people that do this, because it is a hectic job. And I love my family to bits, but it is hard work, right? The good thing about this is a lot of these single women that have been home and raised these families, like, they might not have a resume that really speaks truly about the experiences and skill sets that they've got. But let's be honest, if you can raise a family, if you can get them out of bed, feed them, dress them, cook them, get them to school, pick them up, clean the house, do everything that needs doing, then you have got a skill set that any business owner would absolutely thrive for. That's called hard work, commitment, discipline, and consistency, right? They're the main things that you need for any role in life, and the skill set that I would need somebody to do inside the role in our business. A lot of that can be trained as long as you've got the right attitude and the right disciplines, right? Now, a lot of these single females that are experiencing housing stress or homelessness right now just want safety, affordability, stability, dignity, and connection, right? Now, if they're rattling around in a big 3 or 4 bedroom home, obviously it's going to make it feel worse, because they might not feel safe there. It might not be affordable. If it's not affordable, then they've got no stability, because if it's a rental property and they're struggling to pay the rent, then there's no stability in that either, right? Because they could get kicked out at any time from the owner of that property. And they also want dignity and connection, right? So let's think about what is dignity. A lot of these women in housing stress right now, you wouldn't even know, because they still dress well, they still present well, but behind closed doors, there's a lot more going on for them, right? So again, I believe the HMO, the rooming house, whatever you want to call it, the core living investment opportunity is providing housing opportunities for these people as well, right? Shared, well-designed housing in the right areas that they want to rent and live in. And we call it the ABC. So affordability, build community, and convenience. Affordability, build community, and convenience. They're the 3 reasons that people live in these HMOs. So when you think about all this links back into the rental crisis, right? Single families or single people are currently renting family homes. Couples are renting oversized houses, and single owners are living alone in big homes, which is causing social isolation and loneliness, right? And then we've got rental stock, which is just tightening and tightening and tightening. There's hardly any family homes on the market right now for families to rent. There's stories about families living in cars, living in tents, living in caravans. Prices are spiraling out of control, as in to buy properties to get into, and there's hardly any stock on the market right now. Rents are continuing to rise in certain areas, and then people are starting to get stressed out in the fact, and they're also getting FOMO, the fear of missing out, and they are offering higher weekly rents to get into properties. They're obviously offering higher price points to get into properties if they're looking to buy, and then the cycle continues, because they're then putting themselves into housing stress, spending more than 30% of their gross income on housing, and the circle continues when you think about the affordability, the stability, all of these things that the single females want. I think that's what every female wants, right? It's what every male wants as well: safety, affordability, stability, connection. We all want these things, right? But if we're stretching ourselves to get into rental housing, if we're stretching ourselves to get into the property market, and then all of a sudden a lot of our income is going towards housing, accommodation, and just keeping a roof over our head, then the circle continues, right? And this isn't caused by like bad people. It's caused by the bad housing fit. And I'm not going to say the total wrong housing fit, because for a long time now, apartments haven't stacked up and a lot of people haven't been able to build apartments. And whilst apartments aren't for everybody, it is a good way to bring a high volume of housing options to an area on a small block of land. So you think about it, if you've got a 2,000 square metre block, you could build 50, 60 apartments on that block, depending on the demand in that area, the cost, and the end sale prices as well. So this is where and why I've been talking about HMO and co-living for so long, because I believe it's the right fit for the market. It's not a silver bullet. It's not as if we're just going to like put a heap of them out there and all of a sudden all the housing affordability issues are going away and stuff like that. But it is an option, or it is a diverse form of housing for the market, which is currently not out there, especially in Perth. There's a lot of it in Queensland right now. Melbourne, I believe, is getting smashed with it, especially the amount of people I'm speaking to right now that are buying rooming houses in Bendigo that have got a head lease from the hospital. Yeah, be careful if you're going to that one, because I don't know how many rooming houses and head leases the hospital are going to want. But the right housing in the right area at the right price point for the people that are going to rent these properties as well can significantly change 1 to 6 people, or even 9 people if you're doing them in Melbourne, can change their lives because you as an investor are bringing the right housing stock to the market, right? Because if you're building one house with 4 bedrooms and you're only putting one person in there, then, like I said earlier, the problem continues. But if you're building one house with 6 bedrooms and then you're putting 6 individuals in there, then technically you are freeing up 5 other housing opportunities for people with families, for people that can't get into HMOs because there's none of them at the minute. Our vacancy rate is super low. Yeah, you can basically buy one house, multiple private rooms, shared common spaces, lower cost per person, and then that built-in social and community contact aspect as well, which means fewer people are going to be competing for family housing. It's a better use of the existing housing stock, because if we can build one 6-bedroom house and instead of 6 individual people renting individual houses, they rent 6 rooms in a HMO and frees up 5 other houses for people, then that is a better use of the existing housing stock that we've got out there. And also gives more flexibility for singles and older Australians, because it's the same block of land, more people housed on that one block of land. It's a better outcome for the people that live there because it's affordable, it's convenient, and it builds community. But for you as an investor as well, you also get to sit on an asset which is cash flow positive, even at principal and interest. And you can use that cash flow and the principal component to pay down your debt in 12 to 15 years' time. And then you've got a debt-free asset. And when it's debt-free and you've got no holding costs, then the cash flow from our cash flow modeling shows that these assets will generate over $100,000 a year. And you probably only need one of them to retire and replace your income. But if nothing changes, then the shortage and the headlines will continue, because single-person households are actually increasing. So in the 1950s, and I got these stats from Michael Matusik, so thank you, Michael. So in the 1950s, single-person households were sitting at 10% only. 10% of the market was single-person households. Today, it's around 28%. And the forecast modelling that they're seeing out there right now is saying that we are going to get over 35% of housing stock will be single or person households. So if we keep building large homes for households that are actually shrinking in rentals markets dominated by singles and couples, then the shortages doesn't end, the headlines don't end, and this housing problem just becomes permanent. Now, you just got to look in other countries, right, to look at how they live. Europe, America, Asia, like, they don't live in the big Mac mansions that we live in here in Australia. And don't get me wrong, like, if you are doing well for yourself and you want to buy yourself a big house with all the bells and whistles that you want in the nice areas that you want to live in, that's fantastic. You do you. But that's not for everybody, right? Because not everybody is earning good money like you are. A lot of people out there are struggling to make ends meet right now. And if you're building a 4-bedroom investment property for someone to rent it out for $700-800 a week, then they've still got to furnish it. They've got to put 4 weeks bond down on that, connect the internet. They've got to pay all the bills themselves. So all of a sudden that $800 a week turns into $1,000 a week when you add in all the other things that they need. And then that is just taking more and more money out of their pocket. So what I'm not talking about, though, is forcing people to move, because if they're happy, if you think back to the people that are living alone, like I said earlier, and they're happy living alone, they're happy that the mortgage is almost paid off, they're happy that the grass is growing out of control in the front garden, they can't be bothered to cut it. Like, no one should be pushed out of housing, right? But I think people should be shown other options. And I think a lot of people aren't aware of poor living, or if they are aware of it, they've got this perception and the stigma that's attached to the old share house type of boarding house type housing and the demographic of people that used to rent these houses. But I think, if they looked at our website and seen some of the product that we've been delivering to the market, and some of the other really good operators out there in the country as well, which are doing the right thing. But there's also a lot of people that are doing the wrong thing, right? There's people that are putting too many people in houses and taking advantage and putting people's health and safety at risk because they haven't got the right fire and safety inclusions built into the property. But I believe that housing should reflect like how people live now. How do people live now? How are the kids that are coming through, how are they going to want to live now, right? They're all addicted to Instagram and thinking that like everything's just going to be dropped on their laps because they see somebody else that's done well for themselves and they think they're going to do it as well. And everybody wants to be a digital nomad nowadays. I want to live in Bali and make millions from the mobile phone. We've also got to think about how long people want to rent. We've also got to think about how people age and how people connect. And I don't think that the housing stock that's coming through right now does, or I'm going to say 99% of it doesn't. And a very small percentage of it does. Like I say, there is some good people out there doing some good things, but a lot of people have just got the sausage factory set up and they just want to churn product out to get more housing to the market, which is just adding fuel to the fire because it's the wrong style of housing, but it's all they know, right? So I'm going to leave you with this, right? The housing crisis isn't just about numbers. It's about the right fit. It's about who lives where, how the spaces are used, and whether housing supports life or actually restricts it. Because until the housing design matches the demographics, then the headlines are going to continue, the struggles are going to continue. Essentially, the housing market will stay like it is now. And like in terms of population growth and housing stock coming through, there's a massive inefficiency there. We're not building enough properties fast enough to meet the demand of people coming into the country, specifically into WA, and other states are having this very similar problem as well. So it doesn't matter how many houses we build. If we don't build the right housing for the market, then this problem is going to continue. So hope you got some value from this. Keep an eye out for my wife's podcast. I think it's called Beyond Four Walls. Should probably know this, right? But she hasn't even asked me to come on as a guest, so why should I know the name of her podcast? Only joking, babe. Love you. See you next week on the HMO Property Show. My name's Neil Gibb, and I'll see you then.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you tune in the same time next week so you can stay up to date with all cash flow positive property updates.